This video is brought to you by Sailrite. Visit Sailrite.com for all your project supplies, tools, and instructions. This video tutorial will show you the steps required to make your own side curtain enclosure panels. Every detail from patterning, sewing, installing zippers, and fasteners will be shown. Making your own enclosure curtains may save you thousands compared to having a canvas shop do it. It's not as difficult as it looks, especially after watching this video. Purchase all the supplies needed to make enclosure curtains at Sailrite. Let's get started. To attach our side curtain, we will be using a zipper since our Bimini top is made from fabric. If your top is a hard top, you may want to use awning track and rope or fasteners. Installing awning track will be covered in our How to Make an Enclosure Aft Curtain video coming soon. To sew on the zipper, the Bimini will need to be removed. Prior to its removal, we need to mark the appropriate stop and start locations for the zipper or zippers. Typically, the zipper should stop about an inch or two away from the frame. This makes it easier to insert the zipper starter pin into the starter box when installing the side curtain. We've already finished the side curtain on the port side. Here, you can see the end of the zipper, which stops about 1 inch away from the radar arch. Be sure to mark these start and stop locations on both the starboard and port sides of the Bimini. Now the Bimini can be removed and taken to the sewing table. The finished zipper needs to be the correct length or longer. Here Angela is checking to be sure the zipper is long enough to be used all along the side of the Bimini. She then flips the zipper to the underside and will apply a double-sided tape called seam stick for canvas to the flange of the zipper. This seam stick is a 1/4 inch wide and is perfect for zipper applications because it's not so wide that the glue comes too close to the teeth of the zipper. The seam stick will temporarily hold the zipper in place so we can sew it down perfectly. The zipper has been separated and we will baste the side which has the starter post or pin to the Bimini top. Why? Well, when the side curtain is removed, we don't want the slider to be left on the top, but rather on the curtain, so it does not flop around in the wind. We are basting the zipper so the edge of the flange is about a 1/2 inch away from the facing strip that has been sewn to the side of the Bimini. The distance from the edge is not too important, except that you want the curtain to tuck under the Bimini's edge to keep the weather away from the zipper. The finished zipper is too long, so we will cut it to size with scissors at our stop mark. We recommend using YKK number 10 finished Vislon zippers from Sailrite. Take the leftover zipper and match it up with the opposite side, the side with the slider and starter box. Cut the opposite side of the zipper end off so the length of the zipper is exactly the same as what has been basted on the top. Be sure to cut the end with the stop and not the starter box. Next, cut some 1 inch binding to size so it can wrap around the zipper's end to make a zipper stop. Then begin sewing the zipper down starting at the binding zipper stop end. Keep the stitch about an 1/8 inch away or more from the zipper's teeth to aid in future zipping and unzipping of the slider. The stitch length should be about 6 millimeters in length. We are sewing this project with the Sailrite Ultrafeed sewing machine. This is a heavy-duty portable sewing machine that performs great for a job like this and is cost-effective. In fact, a single full enclosure job like this will easily pay for the machine and more. As is customary, when you begin sewing and end sewing, do some reversing to lock the stitch in place. Place a stop on the opposite side of the zipper that will be used on the side curtain. We will cut the excess of the binding stop with scissors. Then, to prevent the raveling of this umbrella, we will touch the ends with the Sailrite Edge Hot Knife. Be careful to avoid touching the top. Zip the opposite side of the zipper back onto the top. Earlier we used seam stick for canvas a 1/4 inch for the zippers. Now we will use the wider 3/8 inch on the other side of the zipper flange. This wider seam stick will hold the patterning material, which will be applied in the next step. Install the port side zipper following these same steps. To pattern the side curtain, the Bimini top needs to be installed back on the boat. To pattern, we will use 3M filament strapping tape as a base for our seam stick double-sided tape. This strapping tape will make it easy to remove the double-sided tape from the boat when the patterning is done. Our boat already has snap studs installed for side curtains, so we will position the tape approximately 1 inch away from the snaps. The center of the tape should be thought of as the edge of our curtain. If your boat never had side curtains, you will need to think about the best location for the side curtain and apply the tape as a frame for its creation. Our side curtain will be zipped to a front curtain, which will be created after the side curtains are finished. So, we need to think about how we want that forward edge of the side curtain to be created to make the best zipper junction. Typically, most zipper junctions to forward or aft enclosure curtains are at a corner or very near a corner turn. If your boat never had enclosure curtains installed, be sure to walk around your harbor or marina and take note of how other enclosures are made. Some of the most amazing ideas can be gained from what others have done. Notice here that the 3M filament strapping tape is not up against any hard surface. It is simply attached to the front windshield and then the Bimini tubing frame at the top. This will be the zippered edge of our side curtain where it will join up with the front curtain. Next, apply the seam stick for canvas 3/8 inch wide double-sided tape on top of the strapping tape. We will use Durascrim pattern material from Sailrite to make a pattern. We have cut an approximate size panel to fit our side curtain frame. It is larger, but not so large that it's difficult to work with. We like to start at the top, so to prep for basting, the pattern material will be held in place via a pony clamp at the forward edge. We could do that at the aft edge, but since this boat has a radar arch and the snaps are installed to hold the Bimini top, we will simply use a snap to hold the pattern material in place there. The Bimini top has hard action sockets installed to give the snap more holding power. Unsnap the corner snap and lay the pattern material over the stud and re-snap the top over the pattern material. This holds it in place. The fastener will snap, but it will take a lot of force since the pattern material is between it. Moving back inside the boat, we can now baste the pattern material to the zipper's flange via the seam stick for canvas that we installed at the sewing table. However, the Bimini's forward pocket is not allowing the pattern material to lay nicely, so we will cut a relief notch in the pattern material until it is free to lay up against the Bimini's edge. Now remove the basting tape's paper transfer, revealing the glue, and carefully baste the pattern in place. We are doing this with only one person, but if we add a second person on the outside of the boat to apply pressure to the opposite side of the zipper, Angela would find it much easier to quickly baste it to the zipper. What's so great about Durascrim pattern material and seam stick? Well, if you don't like how it looks, you can separate it easily and rebaste it multiple times. Now that the top of the pattern is fixed to the zipper, we can move to the outside of the boat and baste the rest of the pattern in place following the same principles. For your information, other videos are coming soon that will show us working on the front curtain and the aft curtain. The aft curtain video will use awning track and rope to attach to the radar arch, similar to an enclosure curtain that may be attached to a hardtop. Watch for those videos coming soon for more on that. A second helper to apply pressure to the back side of the strapping tape here would also be helpful. Now that the pattern is up, but more adjustment is required, it is always a good idea to cut off excessive overage, which makes the fine-tuning adjustment even easier to accomplish. Angela moved back inside the boat to check the pattern at the top zipper's edge. Make any and all adjustments now for a perfect fitting side curtain. If the pattern looks good and is tight with no wrinkles and hard spots, your enclosure curtain will look great. We are now satisfied with the way the pattern looks on the boat. It's now time to mark the pattern. The first step will be to trace the line along the center of the zipper's teeth. Use a permanent marker with a fine tip. The line here at the aft edge is not very straight. We can fix that at the sewing table. Mark where the zipper ends start and stop on the pattern. A little secret trick is to leave the half of the zipper basted to the pattern for more accurate marking at the sewing table later on. We will show that after marking the entire pattern. As is customary, a good pattern should be marked with as much detail about the boat as possible. However, don't mark so much that you get confused at the sewing table. Here Angela is marking along the radar arch and windshield edge. These will not be cut lines, but are for her reference only. She also marks where the Bimini frame falls. This will not be used when making the side curtain, but again, is for reference if needed. Be sure to mark the side curtain SOUT for starboard outside surface, so when the second port side panel is made, you do not get confused. Draw a line with a permanent marker where you want the edge of the curtain panel to end. This line should be about 1 inch away from the snap studs that are already installed on this boat. Angela will also mark where each snap falls on the pattern for reference. Along the top where the Bimini's edge is, she will mark there also. This corner is important because the Bimini has a snap holding it to the radar arch. The side curtain will have to avoid that spot, so be sure to mark where the snap is on the pattern. Here along the windshield, her line is more than 1 inch away from the snaps. That is a preference and not a rule. She wants the curtain to stop along the bottom edge of the aluminum window frame here. Drawing a line down from the top proves to be difficult for her to keep straight. No worries, it can be straightened at the sewing table later on. For reference only, she will mark where the canvas top edge stops. This will not be a cut line. It's only for reference. The pattern and strapping tape with seam stick can be removed. Since the zipper is basted to the pattern, we're going to try to unzip the pattern, leaving the zipper attached to the pattern. This will give us the opportunity to mark the zipper edge more accurately on the opposite side of the pattern at the sewing table. Because we left the zipper basted to the pattern, we can more easily trace along the teeth on the outside surface of the pattern material. So instead of following the line we traced inside the boat along the zipper, we can use this line instead. We can also confirm the start and stop zipper locations. If the zipper fell off the pattern, well, then you would have to rely on your first marking that was done inside the boat. Not a big deal, but those lines are obviously not going to be as neat as this new line. Remove the basting tape from the zipper. Since we want the zipper's teeth to hang slightly past the top edge, we will create a new line that is down from the main cut line about 1/2 inch. Here on the pattern, you can see where the corner snap was that held the Bimini top in place. Remember, we snapped it over the pattern material earlier. This snap must be avoided when creating the side curtain, so think about the best way to finish this corner off. All the edges of our curtain will be finished off with a 1-inch binding. One straight or angled edge is much easier to bound than several turned edges. Along this forward edge, the line was not very straight, but we know it's supposed to be straight, so we will use this straight edge here. This is the edge where the zipper will be installed to attach the front curtain. We will show those steps later on in the video. Cut out the pattern with scissors. Here we are nesting the port and starboard side curtains on our clear vinyl window material for the best possible usage. Let's discuss the differences in clear vinyl window material as Angela works to trace around the pattern. You have some choices on what brand and quality of clear vinyl you can use. We will start with the best brands, Strata-Glass and OC. These are very UV and scratch resistant vinyls. They are also very clear, like looking out a glass window. Strata-Glass is a little stiffer, while OC is softer. OC is chemical resistant, while Strata-Glass is not. We are using OC 30 gauge for our enclosure curtains. The second best is Crystal Clear and Regalite. Both are UV resistant and very clear. Crystal Clear is more firm, while Regalite is softer. For those trying to save money, Plastipane 30 gauge is an option, but not recommended since it's not UV resistant and not as clear. Remember, the cost of clear vinyl is nothing compared to the labor involved. It's now time to make the facing for the curtain. For the underside facing, we will use a vinyl fabric called Shelterite. You could just use a Sunbrella or whatever fabric you've used for the outside surface as a facing for the underside as well. To install the facings to the edge, we could just make it for the outside surface only, but that would make the inside look kind of ugly, as you would see hems and double-sided tape through the clear vinyl. We are using a yellow grease pencil to mark the black vinyl fabric, as we did when we marked the clear vinyl. We will create a 2-inch wide facing strip for the underside facing. Since we are using a vinyl fabric for this, we do not have to create a hem on the cut inside edge since the fabric will not unravel. If you're using Sunbrella for this facing, you will have to use a hot knife or cut the fabric slightly larger to make a 1/2-inch hem. Here you can see we're using a jig with notches that were created with the Dremel tool. These notches are just deep enough in the wooden yardstick that they hold the tip of the pencil perfectly for easy line striking. When marking the fabric, hold the jig so it's perpendicular to the first line as you mark 2 inches away from it. This vinyl fabric can be cut with scissors to size. Apply seam stick for canvas 3/8 inch or 1/2 inch width to the back side of the facing strip. Shelterite has a side that is glossy and a side that is less shiny. We think the less shiny side looks best, so that will be our surface that will face out. We find it easier to position the facing on the edge prior to removing the transfer paper. Why? Because it sticks very well to the clear vinyl, and it is a little difficult to reposition, but not impossible. Be sure you know which side is the inside and outside of the clear vinyl. Apply this inside facing to the inside surface of the clear vinyl window curtain material. Repeat these steps for each side of the curtain. All sides will get a 2-inch wide underside facing strip except the top edge where a zipper will be sewn at that location. We will use a 1-inch wide underside facing strip there. Notice that when Angela works with the clear vinyl window material, she tries to keep it on the paper that it was shipped in. This is done to help protect the clear vinyl from scratches. In some cases, I have known customers to roll out soft fabrics on the working table, like Naga Soft, underside up, to help protect the vinyl window from accidental scratching. If your curtain panels have curved edges, like this side, making your own facing as shown is a good idea. However, if your curtains are mostly straight edges, you could just use the prefabricated 2-inch facing that Saorite sells. Why are we not using it for this project? Well, prefabricated facing is a production shortcut, but it does not take a curve well. It tends to wrinkle or not lay flat if the curve is rather abrupt. So we are making our own facings for this project. We are finally coming to the top edge where a 1-inch underside or inside facing will need to be made. Same process, different measurement. To save on fabric, especially since the underside facing is not typically seen on the outside, we will cut the length of this extra long edge in half at this slight angled corner. So it will be joined together at this location to cut down on fabric usage that would have been required if we made this out of one long strip that includes a rather abrupt curve. Here you can see we're going to cut this facing to about 1 inch, the width of our jig or ruler. After this half is done, we will repeat the steps for the second half. Here is where we overlapped the two separate strips. Now that the underside facing strips are completed, we can move on and make the outside facing strips. That's coming up next. We used a vinyl fabric called Shelterite for the inside facing strip. Now we will use our Sunbrella marine grade fabric for the outside facing strips. These are made in the same manner, except that they will be a 1/2 inch or 1 inch wider than the adjacent inside strip. This extra width will be used to make a hem for the inside edge, giving a professional, finished look to the curtain panel. Here on this jig you can see that Angela will add 1 inch to make the hem, as the inside facing was 2 inches, so this will be 3 inches. We will be cutting the Sunbrella fabric with scissors instead of a hot knife. Why? Well, we don't have to worry about edges unraveling since the inside edge will accommodate a hem and the outside edges will have a 1 inch binding installed, hiding the edge and giving an awesome finished look to the curtain panel. Continue this process for each edge. As you make each outside facing strip, lay it over the appropriate location, orientated correctly, on the curtain to avoid getting confused when it comes time to baste and sew it in place. When you reach the edge where the facing is 1 inch wide, I recommend cutting the outside facing only a 1/2 inch wider, so it'll be 1.5 inches. It is easier to work with a smaller hem than a large one for a facing that is this small. When we made the inside facing, we made it out of 2 separate strips. That is because we did not have enough fabric that was long enough to make it out of one section. This time we do, so we're making it out of one whole piece this time. Next up, basting. Apply the seam stick for canvas 3/8 inch to the outside surface of every outer edge. Then apply a second row on that same outside surface of the clear vinyl directly over the inner edge of the inside facing strips. If you chose not to use an inside facing, apply the second row of seam stick so it is slightly inside of 2 inches for all the edges except at the top where a 1 inch facing will be applied there. Keep it slightly inside of 1 inch for that edge. On one of the short sides, peel off the outside edge transfer paper from the seam stick, revealing the glue. The long sides should be done only after the 2 short ends or sides are done, so the overlapping at the corners is the same for all curtain panels. Baste the facing strip in place so the edges are even. Then take it to the sewing machine and sew a stitch about 6 millimeters in length very close to the raw edge. This stitch will be covered by a 1 inch binding later on, so be sure it is less than a 1/2 inch away from the raw edge. Notice that Angela tries to keep the paper under the clear vinyl window material to help avoid scraping the window over unprotected surfaces during its creation. Finish one side at a time before moving on. So now that the outside edge is sewn down, let's create our hem along the inside edge. Peel off the transfer paper. This umbrella facing strip was made 1 inch wider than the inside facing strip, so we will fold it back under itself so the fold is directly over the facing strip on the inside surface of the clear vinyl. Cut away any excess from the ends and take this over to the sewing machine and sew a stitch about 1/8 inch to 3/8 inch in from the folded edge. Notice that we do not do any reversing to lock the stitch in place on these strips. Why? Because the binding and other facing strips will cover the end stitching, thus helping to lock that stitch in place later on. Repeat these steps for the opposite short side. Then repeat the same steps for the 2 longer sides, laying the facing over the corners as shown in the video. What does it look like to run out of bobbin? Well, it looks like this, a single thread that is just trailing behind the foot as you sew. No stitches in the fabric. Time to change the bobbin. Create a hem which lays over the corners and matches up with the facing strips on the underside. Along this top edge, the facing takes a rather abrupt turn or curve, and the hem does not want to lay flat. So some relief notches will be made to the hem, allowing it to lay nice and flat. Do not cut past the hem allowance, or it will show up on the outside surface of the facing. Cut enough to allow it to relax. So we're going to cut several here. A typical question we get here at Sayrite is, can I sew this with my home sewing machine? Well, many canvas and upholstery jobs, that answer is yes, depending on the job. However, enclosure curtains like this do require a heavy-duty sewing machine. We highly recommend the portable Ultrafeed sewing machines for a job like this. If you notice, they are sewing through several layers of fabric and the clear vinyl window material easily. Just wait until we have to sew the binding on the edges. Now that's impressive. Now that all the facings are sewn on, cut off any extra fabric or material that may be hanging over the edges, so the binding will go on easier. To sew the 1-inch umbrella acrylic bias binding in place around all the edges, we will use the 1-inch swing-away straight angle binder from Sayrite. I do not recommend doing this job without a binder attachment device. No need to do any reversing yet at the beginning or end because a second run of binding will go over the corners. Your job? Keep the assembly feeding consistently inside the opening of the binder attachment. Let the binder do the job of keeping the stitch straight and folding of the binding. Keep your eye on the assembly, being sure it is pushed up into the opening of the binder so it catches the edge consistently for the stitch. Let's go back and show how we set up the binding for our job. We like to take the roll of binding and place it on a table with an awl or a center post so it can spin as it is being used up. We are using a whole roll of 1-inch Sombrilla acrylic bias binding, which is about 300 feet. Why? Buying a whole roll is cheaper at Sailrite, and we use this also for the creation of our Bimini, and now we will use it for every enclosure panel we make. We used about 90 feet for our Bimini, and we will likely need the rest for all our enclosure panels. This edge with binding installed looks great and has a finished look from the outside and inside. Sew the binding on each edge now. The binding cannot easily take a 90-degree turn, so at any corners overlay the next run so it covers the previous, and do some reversing at the corner to lock the stitch in place. The swing away binder is much better than a stationary binder because when you want to do some reversing, it automatically swings back, allowing the binding to move backwards for a short distance. This binder also works with gradual outside curves, but will not work with inside curves. If you have an inside curve, the nice thing about the swing binder is that it can be swung out of the way so you can install the binding on by hand with the sewing machine for the inside curve, then swing it back when you reach a straightaway. As you can see, I highly recommend the 1-inch swing-away straight angle binder from Sailrite. While I'm selling the products at Sailrite, let's discuss the Sailrite Ultrafeed sewing machines. These are excellent machines for sewing canvas projects like this. They are portable, yet heavy-duty walking foot sewing machines. This is a Sailrite Ultrafeed LS1, a straight stitch model. You will need a heavy-duty machine for enclosure side panels, and the Ultrafeed sewing machines can't be beat for the price and performance they provide. Get yours today and do it yourself and save. Now that all the binding is sewn to the edges, let's compare the curtain to the pattern we made. It is not uncommon for the curtain to be slightly larger, due to the fact that the binding adds slightly to the size all around. In this situation, it looks pretty good. Using the pattern over the inside surface of the curtain, mark the start and stop location for the zipper that is used at the top of the curtain to attach it to the Bimini. If you're using an awning rope and track to attach to a hardtop, you would mark for that. Often, awning rope attaches to a curtain via a zipper, but in some cases it is simply sewn onto the curtain. We highly recommend using seam stick for canvas 1/4 inch width to base the zipper in place. Keep the seam stick away from the teeth as much as possible. That is why the 1/4 inch width is best. The zipper will be installed on the inside surface of the curtain, but it is easier to install it while the curtain is facing outside up. So Angela is marking the outside surface for the start and stop position, and then we'll flip the curtain so she can see how far the teeth are protruding from the edge of the curtain. Remove the transfer paper, revealing the glue, and begin basting the zipper in place, starting at your start position. Be sure that the starter box is on the correct end of the curtain. You may want to go back to the boat to confirm that. Remember when patterning earlier on, we removed about a 1/2 inch along the top edge of the curtain, so our zipper could hang off this edge more. So the zipper teeth should just be resting up against the binding, as shown in the video. I know, this is less than a 1/2 inch, but remember that our curtain grew slightly after the binding was installed, so it should just be about perfect. We will now sew this zipper in place, being sure to reverse the beginning and the end of our sewing. We will sew directly on top of the stitch that secured the binding to the edge. Because the zipper is basted in place, we don't have to worry about it moving while we sew, but as always, keep your eye on it just in case it comes loose. When we reach the zipper slider, stop sewing a few inches from it and bury the needle in the fabric. Lift the presser foot and pull the slider past the foot, and then lower the foot and continue to sew. Since we are using a double pull slider, the tab on the bottom is being stubborn and does not want to slide past the foot. It will, but you may have to work with it for a while. Coming up next, we will install a zipper to the forward vertical edge so this curtain can join up with the front curtain that will be made in another video tutorial coming soon. Since the curtain joins up with the front curtain, we need to install a zipper along the forward edge. We want to protect the zipper from the elements and spray, so we will be creating a Velcro flap to cover the zippered opening. Since we want the flap to fold back towards the aft of the boat in an effort to keep the weather out when underway, we will install Velcro to this side curtain. First, use seam stick for canvas 3/8 to base the Velcro in place prior to sewing. This flap will be made to cover the entire edge, so be sure the Velcro covers the entire edge. Flip the curtain panel over to the inside surface as a finished zipper will be installed there. This zipper should be shorter than the length of the side by about 2 inches per end. This will make it easier to start the zipper since the ends are typically an inch or more over frame tubing or a solid surface like the fiberglass it snaps onto. For us, it's the windshield. As done earlier, the zipper should be basted in place. This time we want the teeth slightly buried behind the binding, just slightly hanging out. This will make for a tight-fitting adjacent panel when zipped together, hiding the zipper from the elements, even if a Velcro closure flap is used or not. Sew this zipper in place. Since we are sewing not only the zipper, but the Velcro on the other side, we want this stitch very close to the edge of the zipper's flange, as shown in the video. This will put the stitch closer to the 1-inch Velcro edge on the back side. We also want to start at the end of the panel to secure the Velcro and the zipper, and end at the end of the panel. Then flip and hold the zipper back as you sew, and sew a stitch very close to the fold of the binding. This stitch secures the other side of the Velcro down. Here's what it should look like on the other side of the Velcro. One more step is all that's required, installing fasteners. Zip the side curtain to the top first. For us, we're using hard action sockets with a snap-right button 1/4-inch barrel. The hard action socket has more holding power than a traditional snap socket. You can get these at Sailrite. Let's take a look at the inside of the Enclosure's top zipper on the Bimini top. We're going to demonstrate 2 tools to install snaps, the Snap-Right system and then the Press and Snap installation tool. First, we will use the Snap-Right system. Take the socket snap and secure it to the Snap-Right socket die. Then insert a mandrel through the die from the bottom up. This die can be used as a positioning system. Simply snap it to the snap stud that's already installed on the boat. We will start at the bottom corner so we can tension the curtain for the best fit. Push the mandrel through the fabric assembly. Then we will use the button die on a standard riveting gun and insert a snap-right button with a 1/4-inch barrel into the die. Position this button snap over the mandrel and push it through the barrel into the tool. Depress the lever several times until the snap is secured well. The mandrel does not necessarily need to break and may be able to be used up to 3 times before bending too much or breaking. The snap is now secured, and we can carefully, so as not to lose it at sea if you're doing this while docked, remove the fabric from the mandrel and unsnap the die to be used again. Hold it. Since our snaps are so close together, we will unsnap this corner snap to position the next mandrel in the fabric since the mandrel is so long. Then once in what we think is the correct position, we can re-snap the opposite snap and assess the fit before installing the actual snap. If we don't like where it is, we can just Pull the mandrel out and reposition it at a different location. This time the mandrel broke. They are expendable, so don't worry. To use the Press and Snap tool, we will need to mark the location of each snap stud that's installed on the boat. Here we're using the soapstone pencil to mark the fabric directly over the stud. I would recommend marking only 1 or 2 at a time, then install them and snap them up before marking more. So you are positioning each new snap with the existing snaps already installed for a better fit. Secure the hard action socket or standard socket if you wish and the button 1/4-inch barrel onto the dies of the Press and Snap tool. Then position the tool over the marked location on the fabric and depress the lever until a vice grip closure snap is felt. Adjustment for that special feel can be done via the knurled knob at the bottom of the tool. If you are careful, you can mark the location of each snap while the curtain is up and then take it down and install each snap at the sewing table. But you must be sure each mark is in the correct location if doing this. You can also use the SnapRite system without a stud, as seen here. The side curtain enclosure panel is now complete. Coming up next is the materials, lists, and tools we use to make the side curtain. Be sure to watch for new videos coming soon showing the front curtain and aft curtain construction. Here's a list of materials we use to make the side curtains. If you have any questions regarding what type of clear vinyl window material or about any other products we carry, give us a call at Sailrite. We're glad to help. Some powerboat enclosures use a vinyl fabric for the facings instead of sunbrella. Brands like Stamoid or Weblon Regatta are very popular. If using those vinyl type fabrics, the construction process is still the same as outlined in this video. Be sure to be watching for 2 more enclosure videos that are coming soon: how to make an enclosure aft curtain and how to make an enclosure front curtain. If your boat uses awning track and rope, the aft curtain video will be demonstrating how that is used. Watch for them at www.sailrite.com or the Sailrite YouTube channel. For more free videos like this, be sure to check out the Sailrite website or subscribe to the Sailrite YouTube channel. It's your loyal patronage to Sailrite that makes these free videos available. Thanks for your loyal support. I'm Eric Grant, and from all of us here at Sailrite, thanks for watching.